Okay, so this is in the recording for people. The minutes from February's meeting there were no changes, no clarifications suggested. They have been moved, seconded, and no objections, so they were approved. No changes will be made to the minutes on the cataloging page. Before we jump into any new business, are there any comments from anybody about topics that are not on the agenda that they would like to bring up for discussion? Nothing that's come up recently for anybody, questions, issues, things they've seen, mysteries in the catalog?
It looks like you have a pretty nice, full, rounded agenda as is. I'm impressed. So I'm looking forward to this meeting, Celine and John.
All right, well, let's just get started. Knowing we could throw something in later if we need to. The first is just revisiting the 999 subfield E, which was discussed in February's minutes. The mentor group is doing a record cleanup process with the 999s. And they just wanted to throw out again to the entire group how important it is to use consistent terminology so that the searches work. And we're also finding that there are some 999s that are coming in when we're importing records through Z39, and those need to be deleted. I saw one the other day. It was a very long 999. It was all numbers. So just double check that because that will conflict with ours. Those are local fields. The only 999s that should be in there are the 901, which is put in by the catalog, and the subfield E, which we put in for book, DVD, etc. Is that correct, Beth? There aren't any other archives that are being popped in?
I'm in a meeting. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're in the meeting. I appreciate that confirmation, Heather. Even though it's our meeting. This is the document that's on the SAGE webpage, and it has all of the approved E values that we want to use. So please reference this and make sure that you're using it exactly as it shows here so that the searches work correctly for the patrons and for us.
This is Perry. I just want to throw in that you can have double entries. So if you have a DVD and Blu-ray combo, you can have two subfields in there with DVD and Blu-ray.
Yes, that's a good point, Perry. The other thing I wanted to add was when these values are entered into the subfield E, the system automatically converts it to all caps. So even though you see a combination of lowercase and uppercase, when it's actually stored in the system, it's all in caps so that we can have consistency, so that we don't have to worry about case at all.
And I believe it was pointed out that punctuation you do not want punctuation because it will mess up the entry, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So were there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Lori, and would you scroll all the way from top to bottom on that sheet so we're all looking at it, please?
So there are 2 pages, and that's the bottom of it.
Would you go back up again? I'm not seeing something that I thought we had approved.
That's the top of it. What are you looking for?
Games.
This is also from 2008. We don't have a more updated version right now.
2018.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but I thought that we had added at one time in a meeting, we talked about adding games. Huh. Oh, toys and games. There it is. My bad. I see it. Which I also use for puzzles, and I don't know if that's quite right, but and models I'm also using it for. Like we have some body part models, and I use that one as well.
One that we did add that is not on this list is the Realia/object.
Ah,
I have that handwritten on mine. I don't remember the date we added it though.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So is that the only one that we need to add? Or do we want to add puzzle and model?
Realia will work for that.
Okay.
We should probably put newspapers on here just because that is one that is used in our catalog. Not that it's approved, just that I saw a bunch of them when I was doing stuff.
I wonder if it was put under magazine/journal instead of newspaper.
No, it was put under newspapers. There's just not newspapers on the 999 list.
Okay. I've made a note of those two and I can update the document.
And I don't know if you want to do this at this time, but we also talked about the subfield FLOT. Is this a good time to consider adding that to this list, or is it a little too complicated at this point?
We also added the BCK for subfield F as well for the book club kits.
This is getting deep. You're right.
Your agenda
So-
just went right out the window, Celine. Sorry.
No, this is great, right? Because then this list will be updated and popped on, and right? It's a good brainstorming session. We're
Do
still
we
talking.
want to actually create a new document for 999 subfield F so that we can add additional fields to that when they come up, or that when we decide to create them?
I think we could possibly combine it in the same document, don't you think? Maybe one
Yeah,
column
we
for
just-
E's and one column for F's.
Yeah, we could do that.
Has anybody else asked about where does the $F show up? How is that? Where does that? Is that a patron visible selection, or is that simply in the computer?
Searchable.
It's a searchable search selection.
You would
Once-
type in book club kit in words.
No, it actually shows up. I haven't added the book club kit to the search index yet, but in the search drop-down box, there's one of the boxes. There's a library of things
It'll be in
choice.
Okay.
It'll be in there, yeah, and it'll say book club kit instead.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So obviously the 999s are going to be cleaned up, added to. There will be an updated document on the webpage. You can get that up. But for catalogers that are not on the mentor group, the importance for you is to double check that list and make sure you get the 999Es in when you're importing new records, because from this moment on, there's a massive cleanup going, and we really want to go forward with as clean as we can, so we don't have to go back and redo it again. Are there any other comments, questions on that topic for now? back to the agenda here, I think. Okay, so in line with looking for those local headings that are coming in when you're importing the Z39, there are others to look for in delete. These are a few examples that John has provided. If you want to go over those, John?
Sure. We just want to make sure that when we're importing records that we avoid importing local subject headings that are valid for the source where they came from, but are not valid in our Sage, the source. And so if you look at the first couple, that's usually what you will see that indicates it's a local subject heading that you want to remove, where it says 6XX second indicator 4 or 6XX second indicator 7 subfield 2 local. Those are usually pretty good indicators that that is a subject heading that's used locally from the source, but you don't want to bring into our catalog. Now, we do have, there are others, but across the board, this is generally what you'll see. The ones down below that are, and please help me, Dia, or other folks if I've forgotten any, but I believe these are the 3 local Sage headings that we have approved. The Oregon Authors Read Along and Book Club Kit. And it's placed in 690, field 690, second indicator 4. So if you see those, if you're attaching to Sage records and you see those are valid local Sage headings.
Are there any other headings that people have seen that they've been trying to weed through, import, or had questions about?
Sometimes I will see a subject heading second indicator 7 subfield 2, and there's something else there besides local. It might be some terminology that the specific source uses that may look interesting or strange. They don't always use local. They may use something else too, and it may be a local subject heading. Of course, the LCGFT and other subfield 2 call signs we see, those are not local subject headings. Those are approved authorized headings. LCGFT, and there are a couple other, art and architecture is AAT, a couple of other subfield 2s that are not going to be local headings that you want to keep in place when you're importing.
And if you come across one that you're not really sure about, you can reach out to one of the mentors and ask. Sometimes a second set of eyes is enough to give you a clue too.
So I use my mentor all the time. I am constantly emailing questions. The mentor list is on the Sage webpage with email contacts. It is a fantastic resource. In my mind, I look at it as I would rather ask questions, risk asking something that I, just probably already knew the answer to, but I wanted to clarify it, and get it right then instead of importing 20 records with the same mistake in it that have to be cleaned up later. So the mentors are fantastic for answering any questions you have. Highly recommend using it. Just shooting off an email is a great way to do it. There's nothing else on that topic. I'm going to scroll down here. So parts. I'm sorry, it looks like I missed something in chat here. Let me, before I move on, there's something in chat from Lori. that everyone should be able to see. It's a detailed Library of Congress subject headings for children's literature, medical subject headings. There's a whole list of them. Did you have anything else you wanted to comment on those, or is that just reference for people, Lori?
And those were examples of ones that you would not remove, and it's all, of course, it's on the OCLC page, which I use constantly and suggest all of my catalogers use a lot also.
And those are also connected to the second indicator in the 6XX field.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll often see other numbers besides 4 and 7. You'll see 1 and 2, and then that corresponds to those, usually corresponds to those various thesauri that Lori put in the chat there.
Okay, so just some extra examples for you guys. Next topic is parts.
This is Lori, and just one pause, not quite a backup, but on that topic, sometimes what happens when we recognize things, you know, the mentors, we think of things that should be removed. Sometimes everyone gets a little bit carried away and starts removing things we should not remove. So I'm hoping that you will either rely on your mentors or use the resources that have been shared before. Make sure you're not removing necessary fields. We have had some issues with that as well. So it's a cautionary tale.
Sure, and just to reiterate, please ask your mentors the resource that's there for you. Moving on to parts. So thinking about what's helped me think about parts and what we're trying to do with it is make everything easy for searching. And if I think about the catalog as a database, not a library catalog, but just as a computer database, it helps me to understand why we have to be so consistent when we enter the pieces of data into it. When we are conducting, or when our patrons, you know, the end result is, what are our patrons seeing when they're doing the searches? What are we as staff seeing when we're doing the searches? When we have a line of 5 people in front of us, we need the searches to be as efficient as possible, to catch as many records as possible, so that we can find items, so we can place holds or find them on the shelf. The best way to make that system work is when we're entering the pieces of data to be very careful on how we do it and be as consistent as possible. Since it is a computer system, and this is, I know this is obvious, but like I said, it helped me think of it as a database instead of a catalog. The computer is simply going to sort like items with like items. So if we don't enter the pieces of data exactly the same, the computer won't think that they are the same item, the same thing. And I have examples because I am a visual person. It's easier for me to look at examples. I'm going to close my chat really quickly here so that I can see the whole page. If anyone sees a chat come up, please interrupt me. So parts are so that we can put multiple libraries records, multiple library items under one record, so the patron can find them easier instead of having to scroll through 50 I Love Lucy records to try to figure out which one is the one so they can find the episodes that they would like to view. That's great, but that also means that each library has to take the extra time to say exactly what they're adding to that record, and that's where parts came in. This is an example of searching for a DVD in our catalog. And this is what the patron sees. They see all these items with identical call numbers. So that's not going to tell them what is in that case. However, when you look at the parts column, you see they're sorted by season. And this one is done correctly because you'll see that there are 2 items that both say season 1. So when the patron goes to place their hold, this is what they see. It's very clear, it's tidy. They can click season 1 and they'll get either of those 2 items. So that's what we want. We want consistency in the terminology and the parts. Here's an example of one that didn't work so well. Go down a little farther here. So some of the call numbers show what season the item might be. Some don't. And then some say complete set and some say complete season. So you and I, having cataloged, can kind of make some assumptions on what these items are probably going to be. The computer can't make assumptions. So this is what the computer is going to give the patron. And the patron looks at it to try to figure out what they want to place a hold on. The term all parts doesn't match anything in what they've seen above. You and I know that's probably all the items that didn't have a part specified.
And if they choose that option, it will randomly choose from those that do not have a part designation. Right.
And if they select the one that says complete season in all caps, maybe that makes the most sense to people because set, they're not sure what set is. They want the complete season. So they select that option. That means these 2 items that say complete season are the only ones that are going to get pulled for people's holds. Is that correct, Beth?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so that means those libraries are the ones that are filling all the hold requests. So this is just, here's another example on disks. So you can tell from the call numbers, except for one, well, some of them say season 4, some don't. And then you look at the disks, and some have a hyphen, some have ampersand, which logically I can tell what that means. And disks is spelled differently. But then the patron now has to select, and they don't know which one to pull. So it's just some examples on how this one. Then we have records with many, many, many items attached. And they're all a little bit different. This is all under one record. And you can see on this one, someone put in the episodes as well as the discs so the patron can see which episodes are on it. And this one actually is what the terminology guidelines on the SAGE web page recommend. So the bottom here, select a part, that's what the patrons have to sort through to try to figure out which hold to place, or you and I have to sort through when we're placing holds for people. Let me pull up, I'm gonna pull up the SAGE parts terms. And let any of the mentors with more experience in this, is there anything you want to add on the best way to handle parts?
I think it's important to be aware when you're adding what is happening with the other libraries that have added parts or have not added parts. For example, if you are adding a complete set and you notice on the record that everyone else has a complete set but has not added any parts, if you add your item and add complete set as a part, that now means that your library is the only one that's going to have parts and everyone else is not going to have parts, which is going to cause problems when the patron goes to put it on hold because the computer will give them the option of complete set, i.e. yours, or all parts, everyone else's, even though all of you have essentially the same thing. So be aware when you're adding parts, or if you are not adding parts, be aware what the other libraries are doing, because we do not want to have 2 different things for what is essentially the same thing. Does that make sense?
Are there any questions or examples of times that people have had a hard time deciding which term to use or how to split up their DVD sets? Seems to be the most of this is with DVD sets from what I've seen.
Before we do that, can I just tag on to what John just said?
Yes.
If you run across some things that you need some cleanup done for other libraries and you don't have time to contact all of them, if you send it to one of the mentors, we can work on that as well. And I don't know that all of the mentors feel comfortable adding parts to different or are able to, but I know my login does allow me to do that. So if I can discern what they are, I can add them for other libraries as well, or I can contact as well. So another option if you need.
It's important to always realize, the catalog has been changing and the process and the guidelines have been changing, but the idea is that moving forward from here, trying to find the consistency and knowing that there will be records that need to be cleaned up in the past, but after sending your information off to the mentors, just try to go as close to correct as you can from here forward. One thing I've seen with the DVDs, and I have been guilty of not doing it, is the episodes. And I am thinking now in the back of my head that since some of the DVD sets that have been purchased are newer versions of old, the disc numbers are not necessarily going to have the same episode numbers on them. And that is why the episodes that's key to add in.
Well, and the other piece, when we were setting this up as the way we kind of thought would be helpful for the patrons is by adding the episodes on this side, they are not seeing that list of the episodes from the bib side when they're getting to this point. So we thought adding that here would be helpful for the patrons. So if anyone wonders why we did that, that was the reasoning.
What about the capitalization issue on this field? I see often that people will create a parts designation in all caps when that same parts designation already exists, just with the first letter capitalized. And I know the system displays it in two different ways, so it looks like it is very important.
It is important here.
Yes.
It's not like what Beth was describing with the 999s.
Yeah, so consistency is important with complete set. And you see here that complete season is not one of our default options. We decided to use complete set to cover more types of materials and offer consistency.
So in the thinking about the computer assorting likes with likes, I'm assuming that even if you did disk 1, comma, episodes 1-3, that will sort differently than the one that uses the colon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So just keeping in mind as you're doing the cataloging, that's the importance for the attention to detail is the computer does all the grouping for it, not based on logic or assumption, but on exactly how it's seeing it.
Is it possible that when we're going in, we don't realize that we can use the already established monograph parts? Is it possible some of us are coming in, instead of realizing we can use, we feel like we have to use or create our own parts title, parts designation, rather than being able to use the designated ones? Is that possible?
So Lisa, do you mean that when you're in the when you're adding your item and you see the item details down below and the volume information up above. And then all the way on the far right side, you have the parts. And if you're creating new, you would type into that box. However, if there are already existing ones to use, you can click the drop-down menu and see all of those. But that's not obvious unless you're kind of making that a part of your workflow to check the already existing parts and see what's there, rather than instinctively adding your own.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that's kind of like a cross action thing going on.
By the way, Celine, note that Sarah has a couple of comments in the chat.
Yeah, I saw that. I was gonna wait for Lisa's to finish.
No, and that I like it just because the way that they're even worded, like you were saying, some people are typing everything in caps. The same exact information is just with the first letter capitalized and everything else. Commas are the same, periods, abbreviations, but it's just written. That I don't understand why somebody would type in something new when that exact information was already there. So I was just curious if we've gone into it thinking we have to create our own part section. Just my 2 bits.
So it's probably just a good reminder to look carefully at the record before you add your piece to it and see how people have labeled their parts. Look in the drop-down menus, check all those places, check the parts terminology cheat sheet, do all of that before actually typing in new parts of your own. There's Sarah Samuels has a couple questions here. I have a question about deciding when to add parts. Should we always be creating a part for complete set for sets of more than, say, 3 disks? Or do we only start down the parts path once a library wants to add a partial part?
My vote is for the second option. Because it does streamline the hold process if they don't have to choose a part. If everybody is doing complete set, there's no need for parts. It's only when somebody decides to package them different.
So then the question is, let's say you have a record and you have 5 or 6 libraries that have added complete sets but do not have parts. So a library decides to add partial parts. As Sarah says, they do their disks independently or however they do it. What is that library's responsibility at that point? Do the other libraries, do they need to have their parts relabeled as complete sets and have parts added, or should that not happen? What does that library do at that point on behalf of the other libraries, or do they do anything?
Yeah, I can see that that's a good question, John, because that's going to open up some confusion. I mean, you can't just assume they're complete sets because there's also a few libraries that forget to mention what parts they have added.
I mean, let's say the patron sees the partial parts, and those are the only parts. All the other libraries that are offering complete sets don't have any parts attached. Is that going to be a problem when they go to place their hold and they see only the parts for the individual disks and they just see all parts designating complete sets? I can see how that might be not as clear as if they saw the broken out parts and then they saw complete set.
Yeah, those are records that would need cleanup. Either if the cataloger either doesn't have the correct permission level or doesn't feel comfortable adding part designations to those other libraries, then it would be something that would be need to refer to the mentors or John or I.
There's a note from Lisa saying to communicate the change to the holdings, and a note from Lori saying, I think we have to add complete set at the beginning. cleanup won't catch all of the mixed sets.
It seems that's what we were recommending when we first started with parts, but I can't remember for sure.
So Dia, you're saying that for DVD sets, we should do complete set even if we don't know whether somebody's going to package them differently?
Yeah, when it's multiple discs, I think there's a very good chance that some will. There are several libraries in our system that, you know, do either one disc at a time, or they do, you know, a couple discs as opposed to all 17 or whatever number. But seems like we were trying to get people to use complete set when they had multiples to begin with, so that we didn't have to go back and do cleanup. Because like Lori said, chances are we're going to miss.
Well, if they aren't using parts, weren't they using a different call number to indicate the different holdings?
The
We can get a
call,
clue from those.
call numbers are, from what I've seen just when I was pulling together the examples for today's meeting, the call numbers are pretty varied.
Well, and the trouble is, call number is not going to allow you to designate really what you want on at the hold level.
Right.
Especially from the patron side, because we do not have copy level holds right now. So yeah, really need the parts.
Well, and two, I found in trying to do cleanup of some of these, there are some, like you said, Celine, some have them and some don't. It's really kind of all over the board. So if we can do it from the beginning, it really is helpful in my mind.
Well, and I think that I know from our library, we've had a lot of changes in the last couple of years, and we used to only do things as complete sets. And we had these massive, 24 disc sets that were going out to people that were being checked out for a week, and it wasn't long enough for them, even binge watching. And with our change of director, we kind of have a soft policy here of, doing about 5 per item, 5 discs per item. We even bought new disc sets for everything and started splitting everything up. So there will be changes within each of the libraries over time. It might be something that needs to be put on the next mentor agenda to revisit the easiest way for the many catalogers to get things correct the first time, the best way for the patrons to be able to sort through their holds, and the least amount of future cleanup. We have a lot of opinions here that I can make note of for the next mentor committee. If there are any other points or notes that people want to make on this discussion that we should follow up on, because it sounds like it needs to be revisited. If you think of anything, or you find a fantastic example of how keeping complete set or not keeping the complete set would work, send it on to your mentors so that they have more ideas to hash out. In the meantime, though, please use the parts terminology page, the cheat sheet that's on the SAGE page, and keep things as consistent as possible from today out. If the mentors change anything again, I'll put it on we'll talk about it in June's meeting. And looking back at the agenda. Okay, so right in line with this discussion, and I know that this topic has been hashed out multiple times. Sometimes I think it's good to bring things up again and see what new information we can find. The mentor committee is doing a lot of cleanup in the databases. There are significant changes coming up with RDA. And as you can see, we have 19 people at the meeting today, and a chunk of those are the mentors themselves. How do we get information on whether people are supposed to say complete set or not out to everybody else that's cataloging? What is the best way? We can email the listserv. That's one way that we're already doing it. We have the meetings recorded and placed on YouTube with links on our webpage. There's another way for people to get the information. Are there any other ways? Perry, you're here today. As a director, can you think of any other ways to get cataloging update information out to everybody that's cataloging?
Well, you could send a critical information memo to directors and have them make sure that the catalogers have received that. I guess that would be my only thought.
And would you prefer that coming just an email? What would be easiest for you to send the information out to your staff catalogers?
Yeah, an email would be best.
Okay. So everyone else that's out there cataloging that's not a mentor, and you think of your coworkers. I know it's difficult to make time to come to these meetings. We're all really busy, especially in small libraries where you're doing multiple tasks all the time. Can you think of ways that your coworkers like to receive information, stuff that will... Any other avenues that we need to think of?
This is not an answer to your question, but I am thinking of some smaller libraries that, say they only have kind of one email for the whole organization. And so the emails don't specifically get to catalogers directly. And so they may have to go more the route of I mean, I'm sure those emails are on the cataloging list, but I'm not all that sure that they're going directly to the catalogers.
Well, as I've been thinking about this and thinking about our staff here, the only other idea I could come up with was contacting directors with information that they can send within their staff or print and post and hand out. I was kind of thinking they were the best link to get out to the many people cataloging. I just see with so many changes coming up, especially with the RDA, that it would be good to really firm up the lines of communication before we try to make all these changes in the next year. If anyone has any other ideas, brilliant ideas, go ahead and email me. I see something from Lisa saying, is there a way to see that all catalogers are on the listserv? Does anyone? Beth?
I periodically go through the cataloging context spreadsheet and verify that each of those catalogers is on the SageCat listserv. I don't know that there's a way for anybody else to see the members of SageCat.
Well, I can add that to the email that I send out to the directors. Just letting them know that if they have staff that are not on the list, to email you, right, Beth, to add?
Yes. Yep.
One
Now,
more
there
idea
is
that would be.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, John. Oh, all right. I have one more idea that we use at Baker when we have big policy changes. So this would be time consuming to scale up to Sage size, but something to think about. When we have big policy change, we'll circulate a confirmation document that has to be signed. Yes, I have read this, and it has to be returned to HR. So we could do that somehow in an electronic format with people having to, check a box on behalf of their library or something like that. Some kind of a survey form.
Perry, is this something, instead of making it, is this something that I could include with information to the directors? Can you please, would you do that? And then if you see someone is not on there, have them email Beth. Instead of having that confirmation, can we do the same thing here? But instead of having that confirmation go list, this huge list, could we limit it to just the directors double checking and then making sure those additional names are forwarded on to Beth? Is that too much to ask of the directors?
I don't think so. Ultimately, the directors are responsible for the quality of work in their organization. So that's a good shortcut.
When I'm thinking the directors themselves would know the most current idea of who is cataloging and who is not cataloging and at what level within their facility. So I know that changes a lot just based on people's job descriptions and season.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, Perry, I'll pull something together and send you, since you've listened to this discussion and you know what we're trying to get through, I'll send you an example and get your feedback. And then I'll try to, we'll see what sort of response we get from the directors.
Okay.
There's another comment from Lori. This is good. How to make sure all catalogers see tips and resources. It's a long-term issue. I do send emails to library directors when I do not hear back from a particular cataloger. Oh, that needs help with working on the records. We'll try that avenue, and maybe we'll at least see we'll get some lines of communication established a little more directly before the RDA stuff starts. Especially with the mentor committee doing all this cleanup right now, it'd be nice to get the word out about it. Are there any other? Oh, go ahead.
John, did you want to throw in your idea? Sorry, I cut you off earlier.
No, that was more important. I was just going to echo what Lisa was saying, that there is the cataloging contact sheet that people can access on the website where they can see the Sage catalogers. I don't think it necessarily is the same thing as who is on the listserv, but that would at least give you an idea of who probably is on the listserv, the cataloging contacts Excel sheet on the Sage website.
So that was the last piece of information that I've been given to share. Does anybody have anything else that's come up during our discussion that I want to talk about before we end it today?
Did we talk about the Cat 1 test?
Not today.
So we do officially have a new Cat 1, which is Lisa. So yay to Lisa.
Yay. Clap, clap, clap.
Yay.
If
Go
there's
ahead.
a way we could have fireworks going and go to meeting, we would, but we can't, so sorry.
There were many fireworks.
And there is a fun article in the East Oregonian from Thursday, if you were at all interested in reading it, which
Oh my.
made me super happy and I giggled.
Oh,
But-
good. I giggled. I definitely giggled. Thank
So-
you. And Heather does, I just want you to know that there are aftershocks of taking a test that Heather creates. There may be therapy involved. I'm not going to say, but this was a hard climb, and it was all worth it.
If you're interested, please contact your mentor. It sounds a little daunting, but I promise we will give you all the help you need. We just really want, you guys to progress and learn and grow. So we have 2 more people who are going through the course right now. So let us know if you're interested. It's good fun.
All right. Is there anything else?
One more thing, going back to 999s, we here at our library have been on a cleanup project the last month to clean up our errant 999s and missing 999s, and in the future we're going to try and develop a system where we can notify other libraries on a sporadic basis. Just taking a survey of their monthly records and letting them know if we're finding missing 999s in records. We haven't quite worked all of these reports out yet, but that's kind of in the works. So don't be scared or freaked out if you get an email from me in the coming months, just as a friendly nudge saying, hey, we had 2 or 3 records, these 2 or 3 records that you imported that didn't have 999s. Can you please fix these? That may be coming down the pike in the future. We haven't got it all figured out yet, but that's something we're working on.
All right. Anything else? Nothing in the chat. All right. So the next meeting will be Monday, June 7th, same time, 11 o'clock. I'll send the links and the agenda out and the minutes for approval the week prior. And in the meantime, if you have any ideas, comments, or questions that have come up, just go ahead and send those on to myself or your mentor. And have a lovely week. It's going to be beautiful spring this week. Even though it was snowing this morning, I know it's going to be beautiful this week. I have hope.
Thanks, Elaine.
You're welcome. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks.
Thanks.